So take your time learning all of that. You don't need it all at once. Find a couple of moves that work well for you that just feel comfortable and natural. Get used to them, and then come back and look at the doc later or watch that section again later and see, oh yeah, that move is cool too. Work it in bit by bit. That's my key advice for everything, is to just sort of learn it in steps. You don't need the full arsenal right away. You can start to play the character with 5 moves and then start working up to 10 moves, 15 moves, etc. So you don't have to learn the entire move list all at once, which is basically what we just went over. A half an hour video to cover the entire thing. You can just start with bits and pieces of it. And what becomes important will start to make itself apparent to you. And then you can start learning the finer details after that. So with that whole move set in mind, that's how you play neutral. That's what you use up close, get your little hits and run away, play mid-range game, keep out, how to get back in, which is very important. You need to be able to do all 3 of those phases: up close, far away, and transition. The moveset changes a little bit, but the game plan is the same. Use your movement, your sidestepping, your flipping and dipping to keep them guessing and force them into making mistakes. The only difference with Lili is she thrives on whiff punishing more than counter hits, which is kind of important to remember. So offensively, there are 3 major categories that I want to look at. Do glide transitions are pretty good, but when your move gets blocked, like back 1 gets blocked, you go into do glide, most of them are pretty weak. They can beat out all of your options with a jab, but now you have a power crush to stop that. Back turned is generally the same thing. When your move gets blocked and you're in the back turned, you're kind of in a little bit of trouble, but you have a power crush that'll stop them in their tracks. As long as you don't have a huge disadvantage, your power crush should bail you out. There's some cases where you're going to see, like if you go to the move list and look at the transition data, like it's written there, +4 on block, +7 on hit. If you're minus a lot, you could be in trouble. So just keep that in mind. For the most part on block, power crushes can bail you out, and on hit, you should be free to run your mix-ups. So there's do glide, there's back turn mix-ups, and there's just overall general frame advantage situations, right? You hit with a 1-2 jab, then you're +8. You can do whatever you want, right? This is a hard mix-up situation. They have their full options, you have your full option, but you got 8 frames. So if you want to go for a low, a mid, or anything you want to do, you're in control during those situations. So let's start with that. Pretty much every move, like we mentioned in the beginning, when you hit them, you're going to have the advantage. You're +4 there, you're +7 there. You might be a mile away with your +7, but it is still your turn, so you can do with that as you will. You may be better off to play the mid-range game than to think of that as offense. But this stuff, 1-2 jabs and down forward 1, these put you at +8, you're in control. In addition, I want to talk about forward 1+2. When this hits, it's only +4, but it's forcing crouch, which severely limits their options. 1, they can only do crouch stuff. 2, they can only sidestep up. So in this case, if they want to sidestep out of there, they have to go up, which when I'm on player 1, it's to Lili's left. So if I do this and this, that'll get them every single time. This move tracks to Lili's left, and since the only way they can sidestep is to the left, you got them for free every time. On the other side, it won't work as well because they can step the other direction. This doesn't track that way. Anyway, that's worth mentioning. So this +4 on crouch, +4 with the forced opponent crouch on hit is really good to look at. So is down forward 3 that we mentioned. +8 is even better, but on block you get 3. 3 is not going to change the world, but it's pretty much the only trap Lili has on block. So if you're just poking and poking, you're not getting anywhere, you throw this out, you put a little bit more pressure on them to do something. So what are their choices when this happens? You don't have good counter hit tools against this. So even say the +3 situation, they have a duck jab that's 10. So that means you need a move that's 12 or better to beat them out, which doesn't really, you don't want to just throw that out and get punished for it. That's not necessary. You can live to fight another day. So you don't have anything like that. Dragonov 1-2-1 or Brian's 1-2-4. They would catch that counter hit and they'd get huge rewards for it. Lili does not have fast little counter hits like that. So that's not the name of the game with this +3 or this +8 in general, but it does get a little better the more you have. So without like a good counter hit bait, she has more situational counter hits. There's 3 things that can happen. They block and do nothing. They challenge you with a button, or they could try to backdash or sidestep or get out of jail. Blocking is the most likely thing. When you do this, they're probably going to just stand there and block. So that's honestly good for you. You can just do this again right? Drop another one of these on their head and make them reset the thought process. This is a good chance for you to go low, do a down one, back turn mix up, do a back one offense. And if they did happen to press a button here, you might get your counter hit, right? This +8, you go into back one. Counter hit options go way up. Point is, Lili can do a lot right here. This is where you want to get all your little things. Any tiny, dumb little thing that you could think of that annoys them. Go for this late delay. Go for back 2-1 mix up, whatever it might be. When you have the advantage and you think they're going to just do nothing, press that advantage even harder. Use lows, use traps, use mix-ups. If you think they're going to press a button to challenge you, you got to think about how smart their button press might be. If they duck jab, you have limited options. But it depends, again, on how much. If at this +8, you're pretty good. It'll be all right. So you could go for things like this down forward 4 that we talked about at 13 frames. That'll probably beat any button they do. And if you saw them press that button, you know you can confirm the second hit. Get it with that. Back 2-1 is the crown jewel of this set, in my opinion, because it's 13 frames. And you're going to get the hit, right? If they're pressing buttons in this scenario, you're going to get the hit, and you're going to be +7 into do glide or +7 into back turn, which is excellent for Lili. She can do whatever she wants there. So there's a lot of things you can do that'll challenge the buttons, but be careful. You got to be fast. You really need to stick to some quicker moves. You can use this for 14 frames and that free follow-up. You can use this at 13, get that low, or you can use this at 13 frames and go mix-ups afterward. So if they press buttons, those are your best ways to shut that down. The last option is to try to backdash out of there. Like, this is pretty close. They're going to have a hard time backdashing away from you there. Even this, really close. So your best way to stop that is forward 3. This is going to catch them sidestepping, and they're probably not going to be able to backdash that at this range. If you're a little bit further away, I guess, already, then yeah, you might get that backdashed. So you have do glide 2. If you're really worried about range, if you caught him with this at the tip, or like just the very tip and you're a little bit out there, do glide 2 covers that range better. Stop him from backdashing, stop him from sidewalking. So that's the name of the game as far as offensive pressure goes. Use what you have and mix them up, not just mid-low, but mentally. And a lot of these things, it's up to you. You could backdash and evade too, right? If you get this +8, you can freely sidestep and just screw with them, right? Keep moving and keep bouncing around. Use Feisty Rabbit once in a while. Start hopping. They're not going to know what to do. They're going to have a really hard time anticipating what you do when it matters. So all these little situations like this, go for something weird every time. Keep them guessing. But those are your major categories that you have to anticipate what they do. If they're a blocky opponent, keep pressuring them. If they're a jabby opponent, counter hit them or sidestep them. And if they're a movement opponent, shut them down with the appropriate tracking or whatever it might be. So you can get those anywhere, right? Pretty much anything that makes contact is good. Even when you knock them down, you run up. These are all good options to go for. The advantage is yours. So let's look at do glide mix-ups, which are fairly strong, but not the strongest. The biggest weakness, in my opinion, for the whole thing is there's no low. There's not a back one into a low, so to speak. You have to sidestep out and then go low, which can take much longer. It's up to you to get used to this stuff. There is another video about do glide cancels, which I have not talked about specifically here. It's a complicated topic, but for the most part, you just press up and you get out of there. Press up and you get out of there. Because you're in a crouch, like we talked about with down forward 3, you have to step up. You cannot go down. So that's the only way to access a low. Other than that, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Back forward 1 is the best way, in my opinion, overall, because on block, it's 0. You still have a pretty good situation here. And again, no matter what happens on hit or block, you can power crush if you think it's going to check them, or you can just sidestep out of there and go for a whiff punish, or sidestep and start over, right? Start the loop again. It's up to you. You got to read the opponent, got to make smart decisions. So back forward 1, I think, is the best overall. On hit, +8, party time. You can go for whatever you want there, right? You can just go for this thing and trap them again, start over. If you get your counter hit, this on counter hit guarantees do glide 3 +4. Oops. Or guarantees do glide 2-1 in heat mode, which is excellent. Heat's always good for that moment, that opening heat where you're plus like 17 and they can't move. It's always a good situation, but it's temporary at best. Nonetheless, heat engagers are good to hit them whenever you can. You might go your whole round without finding a good opportunity to heat engage. But if you catch that counter hit, you go for it. So back 1 is really good. On block, it's one of the best transitions to do glide. On hit, you've got full do glide potential, including sidestepping and resetting and looping and all that stuff. Counter hit, you get free damage. Back 2-1 is almost as good. When you use this as a punish and you definitely get your hit, you get +7, which is pretty good. It's damn near as good. There's no counter hits there, but it works, right? +7 is enough to go for whatever you want into do glide. You know, safe mid, whatever. Take your pick. Run the game, right? If they're just going to stand there and do nothing, you know, go for lows. If they're going to block lows, do mids. Do glide by itself is also practical. You don't want to do that up close a lot. It's better for this mid range we talked about, but just go do glide and do that. It's still totally fine. The point is you have options. Do glide, doing different things every time. Going for this bait once in a while. Going for this chip damage is good. Going for, you know, a sidestep into a low is good. Use all those things in different orders and different timings and you'll be just fine. The last good way to do this, in my opinion, is forward 3 we talked about. A little bit better from farther away than it is up close. And you do not need the counter hit to go heat engager for free. So really good. Think about how good that actually is. From down here, you beat all lows with a mid, and you get guaranteed damage, wall splat, launchers, etc. That's awesome. So do glide can be really good for you. It's not going to get you high rewards. There aren't a ton of like counter hit launchers in there, and there's not a low. So what you're really getting out of this is another layer of your opponent's mental stack, right? You get this +6 on them, they're starting to think again. Next time you go for a down 1-2, back turn. Next time you go for a do glide cancel. Next time you just go for it, you know what I mean? That's what really matters with Lili. She's not like a big payoff all at once character. It's the little stuff that keeps building and building, makes her harder to fight. So the last of 3 categories is back turned. Back turned has gotten way more versatile in this game and has a much more complete set of moves that you could do. 1-1 is a really good way to do this, and back 2-1. We mentioned both of these in the punishment section. 1-1 and a back turn, that's awesome. Back 2-1 is really, really versatile. You can use it as a punish. You can use it in neutral. You can use it with frame advantage everywhere. Really good stuff. The back 2-1 turned around at +7. Awesome stuff. Sidestep 4 is definitely worth experimenting. This is a pretty cool move. It's got good range, and on hit, you got your back turned, right? Just like that. +4 is enough to do your thing. And forward 4, the root of evil, like I said, is debatable. I like it. A lot of people are like, nope, don't do it. It's up to you. If people are starting to block it, forget about it. Otherwise, those are your key moves to get into back turned. Once you're there, there's definitely lows. There are definitely lows in back turned. 2 moves I would mention right away that you should just throw out are 3 + 4. Don't do that. You're going to get launched. It's very little damage. This is a wall floor break combo. If you get into the wall, you do this, and it bang, 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 breaks the floor. That's it. The other one is down 3 + 4. Don't do that. 20 frames is better now. You could technically get away from that, but I don't know. Yeah, 40 damage is all right, but that's a huge risk if they block this thing. I would just throw this move away, in my opinion. Not that good. Otherwise, you got a good, hard, mid-low mix-up out of your back turn, and you got a homing and a power crush. So, the mid launcher, 1 + 2, really good. This is only -11, and it forces crouch. So the only thing they could do to punish you is while standing 4, or duck jab. That's it. June could smack you pretty hard, but she's about the only one like that. The only character that has a 10 frame crouch, like wall splat and all that. Back 1-2 is a mid launcher, is only going to be 11 on block. That's excellent stuff. If you're worried about getting jabbed out of it in time, back 2 is a mid power crush. This is only 1 frame slower. This is going to activate very quickly. And like all mid power crushes, it's unsafe on block, but you're making a read here. You only do a power crush if your read is buttons, and the power crush beats buttons. So you don't really think about that. How negative is it? I don't want to do that. You've already made the determination. This is my answer. Your other mid is homing. Back turn 3-4 we talked about earlier also is an excellent option because it's a homing move. 3-4 into all that damage. Well, 56. That was 56, and I'm only risking -12. That's it. That's really good in my opinion. And the only check to that, it's not like a hit confirm or anything like that. You just do the 3 by itself, you're already -10. You might as well put 12 on the table and go for it and get 56 damage if you're right. The lows that back that up are down 2 and down 4. Not quite as dangerous. There's not a low launcher in here, but down 2 on counter hit does give you some free follow-ups and mix-up opportunity and stuff like that. Honestly, don't know what to do here. I feel like that's guaranteed if I slide right at them, and no matter what I set the computer to, they're standing up backwards. I don't know. That seems like it's kind of real. I'd have to test that further, but you could spend all day labbing and see what you get. If you're off axis a little bit, it might change things. However, back turn down 2. The fact that it's so good on hit and then counter hit, you get that potential shenanigans. Excellent stuff. And the back turn down 4, as we mentioned earlier too, is just a faster but not as good version of that. So your back turn mix-up is actually really strong. The lows are super annoying. They're not the payoff. The mids are the payoff. But with this character who actually has kind of limited lows, right? We had down 3 and we had down 1, 2. Back turned, we have down 2 and down 4. Dougalai doesn't even have a low. So that's it. You got to get a lot of mileage out of these lows. And they're good, annoying lows. They're not payoff lows. So the more you use these lows and annoy people with them, the more it encourages your mids, which are where the real party happens. So lastly, when it comes to offense, there's the idea of counter hits. And as I've mentioned before, Lili's not very good at this. When you're doing, 1, 2 jabs and a down forward, and you take your +8 and you frame trap them again, a lot of characters are trying to do this to bait a counter hit. You used to just mash 4. When 4s were magic, you could just go for that. They're going to have to press a button eventually. It's your job to set them up, frustrate them, make them press that button, and then counter hit them for it. Lili doesn't really fight like that. She has a few, but they're just not a part of the game plan. Her game plan is to move out of the way and punish rather than counter hit. There's a few counter hits in there and some good defensive options, but we'll just look at them real quick. And some we've already mentioned. Forward 1 +2, right? If you use your frame advantage and they press a button, this is a good counter hit because you get the guaranteed 1 +2, which wall splats. Down forward 3 is your only blocking frame trap. If you do it again and they press buttons, this is a counter hit launcher, right? Well, it's a little bit harder now. They made this much tougher to combo. You don't have very many options. You pretty much have to do that. Whole other video talking about combos later, though. Don't worry about it now. So down forward 3 is a good counter hit tool itself, as well as setting up counter hits. It's just kind of slow. This isn't really something. 20 frames is kind of hard to counter hit people with, right? They got to do something slower than 20, but it's there. Down back 3 we haven't talked about yet. This is about the same speed, but this crushes through highs. You can even see in the box it's got crouching frames built into it. This will go under highs and counter hit them and get you a combo that way. So this is kind of interesting. If you got a jabby opponent like we've talked about, you do 1, 2, and then this, and it gets blocked, they're going to jab, do this, and then that counter hits their jab, That's kind of a good way to use an offensive counter hit. Lili doesn't have a lot of those. That's one of the few. We just talked about back turn down 2 in this counter hit situation. It's the same thing. If you do this and kind of delay a little bit, wait for them to jab you or something, that counter hits pretty well. It's hard to time that, but keep it in mind. When you're doing these lows, they do have this option. Every time you go back turn, all right, what do I want to do here? I want to go low. Keep that counter hit in your mind. You can set people up for it a lot. We mentioned full crouch down forward 1 and down forward 3. This is a conventional mix-up, right? You do this, and you're 0, crouching in their face. You have a mid and a low that you can both use on counter hit, and you get rewards. One's got a nice 45 damage follow-up. The other's a launcher. So those are kind of cool. It's just sort of tough to implement that. Lili doesn't have a strong crouch game either, nor does she have good ways to set up crouch. So you go into this trying to find a way to crouch just to do that, it's kind of tough, but it is there should you find yourself in that good situation. You're ducking a Hwoarang string. Like when Hwoarang does a down 3-4, and you duck that, it's actually kind of hard to launch him, because if he does that, bap, 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 it'll launch you because it's fast. It'll catch your hitbox a lot of times. So what you want to do against Hwoarang is a while standing counter hit. So you can do this. Duck under, down 3-4, and do that to counter hit his next move and get your launcher that way, rather than risking yourself to getting tagged. Stuff like that is kind of a higher level topic, but it's there for that reason. And the other low counter hits that can be pretty useful, sort of, Feisty Rabbit 3. It's tough to describe how you would implement this, but you could do stuff like this in the Feisty Rabbit and then go for that counter hit. Okay, I just saw him do a Feisty Rabbit. I'm going to just try to hope to poke him or something, and you get hit by the low. That's tough. Down back 3-4, it's pretty much the same function as down back 3. It goes under highs for a counter hit, but if they block that, it's trouble. I would rather just stick to that if that's your goal, but it's there. So that's your offense. You have all the little situations that produce an advantage for you. Generally, any move on hit. You got to make one of 3 decisions: block, button, or evade, and run your offense from there. Always keep it fresh. Always do little things. Pressure lows. Keep it fresh. Make sure they're always thinking about something different every time you attack them. Do glide is the same thing. You're not like super dangerous, but you're just building onto the puzzle. You're adding more and more pressure and more mental stack for them. Back turn can be really dangerous. You can get a lot of payoff there. Counter hits, not as much. I think the bread and butter comes from the previous section. Back turns especially. You can do a lot of damage by getting people to duck and then just unloading that on them. Really good stuff there.